He walked into Fort Bragg to collect his father's medal. 30 seconds later, the decorated colonel collapsed to his knees, tears streaming down his face, and whispered 5 words that shattered everything. "I left him behind." What this son discovered next about his father's death will leave you speechless. This is a story about sacrifice, lies, and the unbearable weight of truth.
Ethan Cooper's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He sat in the rental car outside Fort Bragg's main gate, staring at the visitor pass the guard had just handed him through the window. The plastic felt too light for something that would let him walk onto the base where his father had trained, where he'd laughed with other soldiers, where he'd become the man who never came home. The North Carolina cold bit through his jacket. January 2025 had been brutal so far, and today felt colder than the rest. Ethan looked at his phone. 9:47 a.m. The ceremony started at 10. He could still leave, drive back to the airport, tell them he was sick, tell them anything. But Mom's face kept appearing in his head, the way she'd looked at him 3 weeks ago when the letter arrived. "You have to go, Ethan, for him. He'd want you there." She couldn't make the trip herself. The chemo had her too weak, stage 4. The doctors gave her maybe 6 months. She needed to believe her husband died a hero. Ethan needed to believe it too. He drove through the gate. The base looked nothing like he'd imagined. Just regular buildings, regular people in uniform walking around like it was a normal Wednesday. He'd expected something more, something that matched the weight of what happened here, what these people did, what his father gave up. The administration building was easy to find. They'd sent detailed instructions. Park in Lot C. Enter through the east entrance. Take the hallway to the right. Conference room B. Someone would meet him there. Everything organized, everything planned, like his father's death was just another item on a checklist. Inside, the hallway smelled like floor cleaner and old coffee. His shoes squeaked on the tile. A specialist, couldn't have been older than 20, stood outside the conference room door. She smiled when she saw him. "Mr. Cooper." "Yeah. I'm Specialist Rodriguez. I'll be coordinating today's ceremony. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "I'm fine." She nodded, still smiling that sympathetic smile everyone gave him when they found out. "We have about 8 minutes before we start. Colonel Harris will be presenting your father's Silver Star. There'll be a few other officers present, some of your father's former unit members who are still stationed here, and a photographer for the official record. The whole thing should take about 20 minutes. The colonel will say a few words about your father's service, then present you with the medal and the citation. After that, there'll be time for you to speak if you'd like, but there's no pressure. Some families prefer to keep it private." Ethan barely heard her. His eyes had caught on a framed photo on the wall. Soldiers in desert camouflage, squinting against the sun. Afghanistan, probably. Maybe Iraq. His father had done 3 tours. The last one killed him. "Mr. Cooper." "Yeah, I don't think I'll speak." "That's perfectly fine." She opened the door. The conference room had been set up like a chapel. Chairs in rows facing a small podium. An American flag on a stand. A table with a folded flag, and a wooden box that probably held the medal. About 15 people already sat in the chairs. They all turned when he walked in. Ethan recognized none of them. These people knew his father, served with him, maybe saved his life once or twice before Kandahar. He knew nothing about them, nothing about that part of his dad's life. Marcus Cooper had kept his military service separate from home. "You don't need to see that stuff," he'd said once, when 12-year-old Ethan asked about his deployment photos. "That's not the dad you need to know." Now Ethan would never know any of it. He sat in the front row. Rodriguez disappeared. The other people whispered to each other, careful not to look directly at him. He pulled out his phone and texted his mom. "Here, about to start." She'd want to know. She'd be sitting in that hospital chair waiting, hoping this gave her son some kind of peace. The door opened. Everyone stood. Ethan stood too, a beat too late, confused until he saw why.
Colonel William Harris walked in wearing his dress uniform, medals covering the left side of his chest. The man was maybe 65, gray hair cut military short, shoulders back despite his age. He looked exactly like what Ethan expected a decorated colonel to look like: strong, certain, in control. But then Harris looked at him. The colonel's face went white, actually white, like someone had drained the blood straight out of his head. His eyes locked onto Ethan's face, and his mouth opened slightly. One hand reached out to grab the doorframe. "Sir?" Rodriguez appeared next to Harris, concerned. "Are you all right?" Harris didn't answer. He stared at Ethan like he'd seen a ghost. His chest started moving faster. His other hand came up to his collar, pulling at it like he couldn't breathe. Ethan stood frozen. What the hell was happening? "Colonel Harris?" Rodriguez's voice got louder. Another officer stood up, moved toward the front. The colonel made it 3 more steps before his knees gave out. He didn't fall, he dropped, straight down onto his knees on the conference room floor, his hands coming up to his face. A sound came out of him, something between a gasp and a sob. "Oh, God," Harris whispered. His whole body shook. "Oh, God, you look just like him." Rodriguez and 2 other officers rushed forward. One tried to help Harris up. The colonel pushed him away, staying on his knees, staring up at Ethan with tears running down his face. "I'm so sorry," Harris said. His voice cracked. "I'm so sorry." Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. "What are you talking about?" "Your father, Marcus. Harris's hands clenched into fists. "You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be accepting this medal." The room felt too small, too hot. Ethan heard his own breathing too loud in his ears. "Sir, maybe we should postpone," Rodriguez started. "No," Harris cut her off. He used the table to pull himself up, standing on shaking legs. He looked at Ethan, and something in his eyes made Ethan's stomach drop. He deserves to know. He should have always known. "Known what?" Ethan's voice came out harder than he meant. Colonel Harris reached for the wooden box on the table, opened it. The silver star gleamed inside, perfect and polished. Harris stared at it for a long moment. "This medal is a lie," Harris said quietly. "Your father didn't die a hero, son. He died because of me." The air left the room. Everyone stared. No one moved. Harris looked up, met Ethan's eyes, and Ethan saw 15 years of guilt carved into every line of the colonel's face. Kandahar, October 2010. I left him behind. If this story is hitting you as hard as it's hitting me, do me a huge favor. Smash that subscribe button and drop a like on this video. These stories of sacrifice and redemption need to be heard. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories like this one. Now, let's find out what really happened in Kandahar. Ethan couldn't breathe. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. The room tilted sideways, and he grabbed the chair in front of him to stay upright. "What?" The word came out like a punch. Harris set the metal box down. His hands trembled so badly the box rattled against the table. "We need to clear the room." "No." Ethan's voice exploded louder than he intended. "You don't get to say that and then hide. Tell me right now. What the hell are you talking about?" Rodriguez moved between them. "Mr. Cooper, I think we should get out of my way." Ethan stepped around her, closing the distance to Harris. The colonel didn't move back, didn't defend himself, just stood there like he wanted Ethan to hit him. "My father died in an ambush? Taliban fighters. He was covering his unit's retreat. That's what they told us. That's what the report said." "The report lied. I wrote that report." The room spun. Ethan heard someone behind him stand up, heard chairs scraping, heard Rodriguez talking into her radio, calling for MPs. But it all sounded far away, like he was underwater. "He was my captain," Harris continued. His face had gone gray. "I was Major Harris then. We were running a joint op with Afghan forces, clearing compounds in a village outside Kandahar. Intel said it was empty. It wasn't." He stopped, his throat working like the words were choking him. "We got hit hard. RPGs, machine gun fire from 3 directions. Lost 2 men in the first 30 seconds. Your father was calling for air support, trying to coordinate evac, and I—" His voice broke completely. Ethan's fists clenched so hard his nails cut into his palms. "Keep talking." "I ordered retreat, full withdrawal to the vehicles. Your father countermanded me, said we couldn't leave, we had wounded, we'd be cut down in the open. He was right. He was always right. But I pulled rank, ordered everyone to fall back immediately." Harris's eyes went distant, seeing something 15 years ago. "Most of the unit followed me. 6 men stayed with your father. They trusted him more than they trusted me." The door burst open. 2 military police officers rushed in. Rodriguez pointed at Ethan and Harris, but Harris held up one hand. "Stand down. This man deserves to hear this." "Sir, we should handle this through proper channels," one of the MPs started. "I said stand down, Sergeant. That's an order." Harris turned back to Ethan. "We made it to the vehicles. I kept telling myself your father would follow, that he'd get his men out. I waited 2 minutes. That's all. 2 minutes. Then I gave the order to move out." "You left him." Ethan's voice sounded like someone else's. "Cold. Dead. You left 6 men. The Taliban overran their position 8 minutes later. We heard it on the radio. Your father—" Harris's face crumpled. "He called for help, begged me to come back. I told him we couldn't. The enemy force was too strong. We'd lose everyone. He said—" Harris stopped, physically unable to continue. "What did he say?" Ethan moved closer. "What did my father say?" Harris met his eyes. "Tell my son his father fought like hell." Those were his last words before the radio went dead. The sound that came out of Ethan didn't feel human. Rage, grief, betrayal all mixed into something that burned through his chest and throat. He grabbed Harris by his uniform jacket and slammed him against the wall. The metals rattled. The flag stand toppled over. The MPs moved in, but Harris shouted, "Don't touch him." "You coward. You piece of shit coward. You let him die and then you wrote a report that made him a hero so no one would know the truth? You've been walking around free for 15 years while my father rotted in the ground and my mother cried herself to sleep every night thinking he died with honor." "I know." Tears ran down Harris's face. "I know. There hasn't been a day I haven't seen his face, haven't heard his voice on that radio. I tried to get the story changed, tried to tell the truth 100 times, but the army, they wanted heroes, not scandals. They promoted me, gave me a medal for that same operation. Every piece of metal on my chest is a reminder that I'm a fraud. You should be in prison. I should be dead. I've written confessions, burned them, written them again. I kept thinking if I served well enough, if I saved enough other soldiers, if I never made that mistake again, maybe it would balance out. But it doesn't. Nothing balances out watching 6 good men die because you were too afraid to save them. Stop talking about yourself, Ethan shook him. This isn't about your guilt. My mom is dying. Cancer. She has maybe 6 months left, and she wanted to believe her husband died a hero. You took that from her. You took everything. Harris's eyes widened. Your mother, Sarah? Don't you dare say her name. She doesn't know? Nobody knows except you and the men who ran away with you. Ethan released Harris, shoving him hard. The colonel stumbled but caught himself. How many cowards are walking free? 14 men in that unit came back. 3 have died since. The rest... Harris steadied himself against the wall. They believe the official story. I never told anyone the truth. The only other person who knew was the radio operator in our vehicle. Corporal Stevens. He heard everything your father said, heard me refuse to go back. Where is he? Dead. Harris's voice went flat. Suicide. 2019. Left a note that said he couldn't live with what we did.
The room went silent, except for Ethan's ragged breathing. He looked around at all the faces staring at him. Rodriguez with her hand over her mouth. The MPs frozen, uncertain. The other officers and soldiers who'd come to honor his father, now witnessing something that would probably end Harris's career. End his life as he knew it. Good. Ethan wanted him destroyed. He turned to the table, grabbed the wooden box with the silver star, and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor, the metal spilling out onto the tile. You can keep your fake medal and your fake honor. Ethan's voice shook. I hope every morning you wake up and remember you're the reason 6 men died. I hope it eats you alive. He walked toward the door. The MPs stepped aside. Rodriguez looked like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Ethan stopped at the threshold, hand on the doorframe, and looked back at Harris. The colonel had slumped down into a chair, his head in his hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. My father had a choice, stay and fight or run and live. He chose to stay. He chose honor. You chose yourself. He paused. I'm going to tell everyone. My mother, the media, anyone who'll listen. The world is going to know what kind of man you really are. I know. Harris looked up. His face was destroyed. I'm glad. I should have told the truth 15 years ago. I was just too weak. Ethan walked out. The hallway was too bright, too normal. He could hear Rodriguez behind him, talking urgently into her radio. He kept walking. Through the building, through the parking lot, to his rental car. His hand shook so badly, he dropped the keys twice before he got the door open. Inside, he sat in the driver's seat and stared at nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from his mom. How did it go? Is it beautiful? I wish I could have been there. He couldn't answer. Couldn't tell her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What would knowing the truth do except take away the one thing that gave her peace? The belief that her husband died a hero, that his sacrifice meant something. But it was a lie. Everything was a lie. Ethan's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered without thinking. Mr. Cooper? A man's voice, older, rough. This is First Sergeant James Kowalski, retired. I was in your father's unit. I called because I heard what happened in that conference room. Word travels fast on base. I don't want to talk to anyone who was there. I know, but you need to hear this. Kowalski took a breath. Harris told you he left your father behind. That's true, but that's not the whole story. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. What are you talking about? Your father didn't just stay to fight. He volunteered. He told Harris to take everyone and go.
Said someone needed to slow down the Taliban advance or they'd chase down the vehicles and kill everyone. He knew it was a suicide mission. He chose it anyway. The world stopped. What? Marcus Cooper saved 38 lives that day, including mine. Harris was a coward, you're right about that. But your father? Kowalski's voice cracked. Your father was the bravest man I ever knew. He looked Harris in the eye and said, "Get them out of here. That's an order." He pulled rank on a superior officer because he knew someone had to make the hard call. Ethan couldn't speak, couldn't think. Harris has lived with guilt because he followed that order instead of staying to die with your father. But Marcus didn't want anyone else to die. That's who he was. The official report was bullshit. But your father really was a hero, son. Maybe the only real one in that whole damn operation. The line went quiet. Ethan sat in the car, phone pressed to his ear, tears running down his face. "Thank you," he finally whispered. "Your father talked about you constantly. Said you were going to be better than him, smarter, kinder. Looks like he was right." Kowalski cleared his throat. "I'm sorry you had to learn about it this way, but don't let Harris's weakness take away what your father really did. Don't let it poison the truth." The call ended. Ethan sat in the parking lot as the North Carolina cold seeped through the windows. His phone buzzed again. His mom's text was still on the screen, waiting for an answer. He thought about Harris, destroyed by guilt. Thought about his father, making an impossible choice. Thought about his mom, dying slowly in a hospital bed, holding on to the memory of a man she loved. Maybe some truths were meant to stay buried. Maybe some lies were mercies. Ethan wiped his face, started the car, and typed a response. "It was beautiful, Mom. They said Dad was the bravest man they ever knew. They were right."
That ending, I wasn't ready for that. If this story moved you, if it made you think about sacrifice, honor, and the impossible choices people make, please subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell because we're bringing you more raw, emotional, true stories that matter. Drop a comment below. Would you have told the truth, or would you have protected your mother's peace? I want to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and remember, real heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they just make the hardest choice when no one's looking.